My name is Catherine Morrison, and I'm 32 years old. Imagine standing in a room filled with 200 military officers while your own sister, wearing her decorated Air Force uniform, introduces you as the family disappointment who couldn't even hold a real job. Now imagine the shock on every face when the three-star general commanding the entire base walks right past her, stands at attention, and salutes you instead. This isn't some revenge fantasy I dreamed up in therapy. This happened at Fort Bradley Military Base just last month, and it taught both my sister and me the most important lesson about respect, boundaries, and the dangerous assumption that a quiet life means an unsuccessful one. Before I share how my sister's public humiliation became the wake-up call she desperately needed, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. I'm curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop a comment below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to that morning when I drove through the military checkpoint, completely unaware I was about to face the most public humiliation of my life. Growing up as daughters of Colonel James Morrison meant everything in our house was measured in military achievements. Report cards weren't about grades, they were about class rank. Sports weren't about fun, they were about leadership potential. And career choices? Well, those were about service to country, period. Jessica thrived in that environment. ROTC captain in high school, valedictorian at the Air Force Academy, youngest squadron leader in her unit's history. Every family dinner came with updates on her latest commendation, her newest qualification, another record broken. Our parents would beam while she described flight maneuvers and mission briefings, their eyes glazing over with pride. "Katie still playing with her computers?" Jessica would ask at every family gathering, that slight smirk suggesting my work was just an expensive hobby. The way she said computers, like it was a dirty word, something childish and unserious. Our parents would shift uncomfortably. Mom would quickly change the subject to Jessica's upcoming promotion board. Dad would ask about her squadron's readiness scores. And I'd sit there, cutting my food into smaller and smaller pieces, smiling and nodding while Jessica regaled everyone with stories of her latest training exercise at Nellis or her perfect scores on tactical evaluations. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that while Jessica was earning her captain's bars, I was in a classified facility in Mountain View, developing predictive radar algorithms that could detect stealth aircraft 300 miles out. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her squadron would eventually depend on my technology to stay alive, though none of them knew it yet. 2 years ago, I founded Sentinel Defense Systems in a converted warehouse in San Jose. The name was deliberately boring, deliberately forgettable. While Jessica was getting her picture in the base newspaper for leading a successful readiness drill, I was signing NDAs with Pentagon officials and debugging code that would revolutionize aerial threat detection. "You know, Kate," she'd said at last Thanksgiving, carving turkey with military precision, "it's never too late to do something meaningful with your life. The Air Force has civilian positions too. Data entry, administrative support. I could put in a word." Our mother had gasped softly. Dad cleared his throat. But I just passed the gravy and asked about her squadron's new aircraft. I'd learned long ago that defending myself only gave Jessica more ammunition. Better to let her think what she wanted. After all, the contract in my desk drawer, the one worth $50 million, didn't need her approval. The invitation to Jessica's awards ceremony arrived 3 weeks ago, heavy cardstock with the Air Force seal embossed in gold. Her handwritten note on the back was classic. "Jessica, try to dress professionally for once. Important people will be there. J." I almost threw it away. Almost, but something made me pin it to my office bulletin board, right next to the letter from the Secretary of Defense that Jessica would never know about. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in my walk-in closet longer than usual, staring at two suits. The safe choice was my conservative black suit, the one Jessica always said made me look like a funeral director who shops at Target. But hanging next to it was my navy Armani, the one I wore to Pentagon briefings. The one I wore 3 days ago when I signed the contract that would change everything. That contract. Even now, holding the countersigned pages, I could barely believe it was real. $50 million for exclusive rights to our Eagle Eye detection system. General Richardson himself had stood up from behind his desk, walked around, and shaken my hand with both of his. "Ms. Morrison," he'd said, "you've achieved in 7 years what Lockheed and Raytheon couldn't manage in 20. This technology will save lives." I chose the Armani. The drive to Fort Bradley took 2 hours through morning traffic. 2 hours of thinking about all the times Jessica had introduced me to her military friends as her computer hobbyist sister, or her sister who's still finding herself at 32. 2 hours of remembering every family dinner where my achievements were glossed over so we could hear, again, about Jessica's latest accomplishment. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from my CFO, Marcus. "Pentagon confirmation just came through. You're officially their primary radar supplier for the Pacific Fleet. Congratulations, Kate, you've earned this." I pulled into the base parking lot, showed my visitor's pass to the guard at the checkpoint. He glanced at it, then did a double take, his eyes widening slightly. "Ms. Catherine Morrison, from Sentinel Defense Systems?" "Yes?" He snapped to attention so fast I thought he might hurt himself. "Ma'am, General Richardson asked me to inform him personally when you arrived. He said it was urgent." Strange, I thought, but I nodded and thanked him. As I walked toward the ceremony hall, I noticed other personnel glancing at me, whispering. A maintenance crew actually stopped working to stare. Something was happening here. Something I didn't understand yet. The ceremony hall was pure military intimidation. Hundreds of perfectly aligned chairs, walls lined with battle flags and squadron emblems, a stage that looked like it could host a war tribunal. The smell of floor wax and starched uniforms was overwhelming. I found my assigned seat in the family section, surrounded by beaming spouses wearing their Sunday best and parents clutching cameras. The woman next to me wore a pin with her son's photo in uniform. She smiled warmly, the kind of smile military families perfect, proud but tinged with worry. "First time at one of these?" she asked. "No, my sister's received awards before." "Captain Morrison's your sister? She's quite something. Youngest squadron leader on base, I heard." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the pre-ceremony chatter. "Kate?" Major Thompson, Jessica's direct commanding officer, stood in the aisle looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Ms. Morrison, I didn't expect— it's an honor to meet you in person." "In person? We'd never met before." "I'm sorry, have we—" "Ma'am, your reputation precedes you. The briefing yesterday about Eagle Eye. Extraordinary work." He knew about Eagle Eye? But that was classified at the highest levels. Before I could ask, Jessica appeared, resplendent in her dress blues with 3 new ribbons I didn't recognize. Her smile flickered when she saw me, then shifted to confusion seeing Major Thompson at my side. "Major, is everything all right?" "Everything? Just introducing myself to your sister, Captain." He nodded to me once more, almost reverently, then walked away. Jessica watched him go, frowning. What was that about? I have no idea. She studied my outfit, her lips pursing. "Is that new? It's a bit much for a family event, don't you think?" "It's nice to see you too, Jess." She glanced around the rapidly filling hall, then leaned in close. "Look, I need to introduce family members during my acceptance speech. Just smile and wave, okay? These people matter. Colonel Hayes over there oversees procurement for the entire Western region. General Richardson might even show up. These are people who control millions in defense contracts." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Almost. "This isn't one of your tech meetups, Kate. These people don't care about disruption or innovation or whatever buzzwords you're into these days. They care about service, sacrifice, and strength. Try to remember that." "I'll be appropriate, Jessica. I promise." "Good." She straightened my visitor's badge like I was 5. "This is my world. Please don't embarrass me." My world. If only she knew. The ceremony began with the standard pomp: presentation of colors, national anthem, Invocation. I noticed 3 lieutenant colonels in the row ahead kept turning to look at me, whispering urgently. One pulled out his phone, showed something to the others, then all 3 turned to stare. "Your sister seems to have admirers," the woman next to me commented. "Though they're looking at you, not the stage." She was right. Throughout the opening remarks, I caught more glances, more whispers. A full colonel from the tech division actually stood up, walked to a better vantage point, and studied me like I was a rare artifact. Then the energy in the room shifted completely. General Richardson entered from the back, his 3 stars catching the overhead lights. The entire room subtly straightened, even those already at attention seemed to stand taller. He was early. Jessica had said he might not even make it. His aide, a sharp-looking major with intelligence insignia, scanned the room methodically. When his eyes found me, he immediately leaned toward the general, whispering urgently. General Richardson's gaze followed, locking onto mine. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable, then did something unexpected. He didn't take his reserved seat in the front row. Instead, he remained standing at the back, positioned where he could see both the stage and where I sat. "And now," the MC announced, pulling my attention back, "for our Excellence in Operations Award, Captain Jessica Morrison." Jessica strode to the podium with perfect military bearing, her shoulders back, chin high. The crowd applauded politely. She waited for silence, then began. "Service before self. These 3 words define not just our creed but our character. Today, receiving this honor, I'm reminded that excellence isn't achieved alone." Standard opening. Safe. Professional. "I want to thank my parents, Colonel James Morrison and Mrs. Linda Morrison, for teaching me that duty isn't just a word, it's a way of life." Warm applause. Our parents, watching via live stream from Florida, were probably crying. "My brother, Lieutenant David Morrison, currently deployed in Qatar, who shows me daily what courage really means." More applause. David would hate being mentioned, but he wasn't here to object. "And—" Jessica paused, that familiar smirk appearing. "My older sister Kate is here too, taking a break from her computer activities." A few chuckles. My face warmed. "She's between jobs right now, trying to find her path." It's never easy being the civilian in a military family, especially when you haven't quite found your purpose yet at 32. But we love her anyway. The laughter was scattered, uncomfortable. Several senior officers weren't even pretending to smile anymore. General Richardson was walking toward the stage. Jessica, emboldened by the nervous laughter, leaned into the microphone. "Kate here has been working on computers for about 10 years now." She used air quotes, her voice dripping with condescension. "Still waiting for that big breakthrough, aren't we, sis?" The woman next to me gasped softly. Major Thompson, standing near the wall, looked like he wanted to disappear into it. "But hey," Jessica continued, oblivious to the shifting atmosphere, "if anyone needs help with their iPhone after the ceremony, she's your girl. Right, Kate?" She actually winked at me, in front of 200 officers. My hands clenched in my lap, but I kept my expression neutral. I even offered to help her get a civilian position on base. Entry level, of course, but we all have to start somewhere, even at 32. She chuckled at her own joke. "Sometimes I think the best thing about my success is showing Kate what she could have achieved if she'd made better choices." The silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable, it was hostile. Several senior officers were now standing, their faces dark with something between shock and anger. "You know what they say," Jessica pressed on, completely missing every social cue. "Behind every successful military family is one relative who reminds us why we chose to serve instead of whatever it is Kate does these days. Playing with code? Building websites? Honestly, I've stopped keeping track." "Captain Morrison." General Richardson's voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. Every head turned. He was halfway to the stage, his expression carved from stone. "General!" Jessica's voice jumped an octave. "I didn't realize you'd— I'm honored you could— Captain, before you continue, I have a question." His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that preceded court-martials. "Do you know what your sister actually does for a living?" Jessica laughed nervously, adjusting the microphone. "Sir, she works with computers, small projects, freelance stuff. She's been trying to start some kind of company, I think." "Freelance stuff." He repeated each word like it tasted bitter. "Captain, are you aware that the Eagle Eye detection system your squadron is scheduled to receive next month was designed by a civilian contractor?" Jessica straightened, trying to recover her composure. "Yes, sir. The briefing mentioned it was revolutionary technology." "Revolutionary?" "Yes. A $50 million contract with the Pentagon, the largest civilian defense contract in a decade." He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Captain, do you know the name of the company that developed it?" The color was already draining from Jessica's face. I believe it was classified, sir." "Sentinel Defense Systems." General Richardson let the name hang in the air like an unexploded ordnance. "CEO and founder, Catherine Morrison." The blood drained from Jessica's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her award trembled in her hand. That must be a different Catherine Morrison, sir." "A different Catherine Morrison who graduated from MIT with dual masters in computer science and applied physics?" "A different Catherine Morrison whose father is Colonel James Morrison, retired, whose brother is Lieutenant David Morrison, currently stationed in Qatar." His voice never rose, but each word hit like a precision strike. "Captain, how many Catherine Morrisons do you think have top-secret clearance with special access program authorization?" The entire room had turned to stare at me. I stood slowly, my legs surprisingly steady despite the hundreds of eyes on me. "Ms. Morrison," General Richardson addressed me directly, "would you please join us?" I walked to the front, the click of my heels the only sound in the deadly quiet hall. As I passed Jessica, still frozen at the podium, I saw the exact moment she understood what she'd done. "Ladies and gentlemen," the general announced, "Ms. Catherine Morrison is not only our newest defense contractor, but the developer of the most advanced early warning system in the Western Hemisphere. Her technology detected a missile threat in Syria last month, 17 minutes before conventional radar. 300 personnel evacuated safely because of her innovation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone started clapping, then stopped, unsure of protocol. "Ms. Morrison's company has just been awarded exclusive supplier status for all early warning systems in the Pacific Fleet. This contract," he paused for emphasis, "makes her company one of the most critical civilian partners in our national defense infrastructure." He turned to face me directly. What happened next sent shockwaves through the room that I could physically feel. General Richardson, 3-star general, commander of Fort Bradley, and its 12,000 personnel, snapped to perfect attention and rendered a salute. To me, a civilian, in front of his entire officer corps. "Ms. Morrison, on behalf of the United States Air Force, thank you for your service to our nation's defense." The sound of 200 officers rising to their feet in unison was like thunder. They stood at attention, all of them, from the newest lieutenant to the senior colonels. For me. For the computer hobbyist. For Jessica's unemployed sister. Jessica's award clattered to the podium floor. The sound echoed in the silence that followed. I know this moment might seem like something out of a movie, but I promise you it happened exactly like this. If you've ever had your work dismissed by family, if you've ever been the unsuccessful one at family gatherings, you know how this feels. I see you in the comments sharing your own stories, and they matter. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button. It helps others who need to hear this find it. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. I share real experiences about respect, boundaries, and finding your worth every week. Now, let me tell you what happened when Jessica finally found her voice. General Richardson held the salute until I awkwardly nodded. Only then did he relax, turning back to address the room as the officers retook their seats. "Captain Morrison," his voice could have frozen jet fuel, "your sister holds security clearances that exceed yours by 3 levels. She has been in meetings with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Her patents are classified at such a level that even mentioning their existence requires special authorization. Jessica stood at the podium like a broken doll, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Furthermore, he continued, as our exclusive supplier, Ms. Morrison has contractual authority over who can access her technology. Every squadron commander, every base that wants to implement Eagle Eye, needs her personal approval. Major Thompson stepped forward from the wall. Sir, does this mean— It means, Major, that Captain Morrison's squadron's upcoming upgrade depends entirely on her sister's signature. He turned back to Jessica. The sister she just called unemployed, the sister she offered an entry-level data position, the sister whose computer activities will save more lives than most of us will in our entire careers. The general reached into his jacket, pulling out an official envelope. Ms. Morrison, I was planning to do this privately, but given the circumstances, he handed it to me with both hands formally. Your Congressional Commendation for Contributions to National Defense, signed yesterday by the Secretary of Defense. I took the envelope, my hands steady despite my racing heart. The weight of it felt significant, final. Captain Morrison. General Richardson's voice dropped even lower. You should know that your sister's company has been designated a critical defense asset. Any interference with her operations, any attempt to undermine her work or reputation would be considered a threat to national security. I trust I'm making myself clear? Jessica's "yes, sir" was barely a whisper. There's one more thing, General Richardson announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. The Pentagon has requested Ms. Morrison serve as technical advisor for all West Coast implementations. Captain Morrison, that means your sister will be evaluating your squadron's readiness to handle her technology. The implications hit Jessica like a physical blow. She gripped the podium for support. Colonel Hayes from Procurement stood up. General, if I may, we've been trying to arrange a meeting with Ms. Morrison for 3 months. Her office said she'd be attending a family event today. He looked at Jessica with barely concealed disgust. We didn't realize it was this one. My office didn't mention the nature of the event, I said, speaking publicly for the first time. My voice was steady, professional. I simply blocked out the time for family. Family, General Richardson repeated, looking at Jessica. Captain, do you have anything you'd like to say to your family? Jessica turned to me, her face pale, eyes desperate. Kate, I had no idea. Captain Morrison, the general cut her off. You'll have time for personal conversations later. For now, perhaps you should finish your acceptance speech. Though I'd suggest reconsidering your prepared remarks about military superiority over civilian contributors. Someone in the back actually coughed to cover a laugh. Jessica stood at the podium, award forgotten on the floor, facing 200 officers who now knew she'd just publicly humiliated the Pentagon's newest golden child, her squadron's future, her sister. She started, stopped, tried again. I want to thank everyone for this honor. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. Her voice was hollow. The applause, when it came, was perfunctory, a few polite claps that died quickly. She bent to pick up her award, hands shaking, then walked off stage. Jessica descended from the stage, her legs visibly unsteady. The crowd parted as she approached me, their expressions ranging from shock to second-hand embarrassment. She stopped 3 feet away, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. Kate, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell me? We could have— I would have— Would have what, Jessica? My voice was quiet but carried in the silent hall. Treated me with basic respect? Oh, come on! Her voice pitched higher, defensive, desperate. It was just sibling teasing. Everyone knows I didn't mean anything by it. Several officers actually stepped back, not wanting to be associated with her defense. Captain Morrison? Major Thompson's intervention was sharp. Perhaps this conversation should be private. No, Jessica snapped, then caught herself, her military bearing cracking. I mean, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Kate knows I've always supported her. Tell them, Kate. Tell them how I offered to help you get a job here. Every eye in the room turned to me. The weight of their attention was overwhelming, but I kept my voice level. You offered me an entry-level data entry position, despite knowing I have 2 master's degrees from MIT. I didn't know about this company. Her voice cracked, raw with panic. How was I supposed to know you were some big defense contractor? You never said anything. You let me think. I let you think what you wanted to think, Jessica. Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you called it playing with computers. Because that's what you said you did. No, I said I worked in technology. You decided that meant I was unemployed. She spun to face the room, her eyes wild, searching for support that wasn't coming. This is just a misunderstanding between sisters. Kate's always been secretive about her work. Security clearance, apparently. How was I supposed to know? Captain. General Richardson's single word was Arctic. You're making this worse. But Jessica couldn't stop. The hole was dug. She kept digging. I was trying to help her. You thought she needed your pity, Colonel Hayes interrupted. We all heard you, Captain. Entry-level position for your 32-year-old sister with dual MIT degrees. Do you have any idea how that sounds now? The silence that followed was excruciating. Jessica stood there, isolated in a sea of uniforms, her career imploding in real time. This moment, watching someone realize they've been wrong about everything, it's hard to watch, even harder to live through. But sometimes people need to face the consequences of their assumptions. If you've ever been underestimated by family, told you weren't good enough, made to feel small for choosing a different path, drop a comment. Your stories matter, and this community sees you. Share this with someone who needs to hear that success doesn't always wear a uniform or announce itself loudly. And remember to subscribe if you want more stories about standing tall when others try to make you small. Now here's where things got really serious. Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his procurement insignia catching the light. Captain Morrison, are you aware that your squadron's effectiveness rating depends on successfully implementing the Eagle Eye system? Jessica nodded mutely, her face gray. And you understand that Ms. Morrison's company provides mandatory training and certification for that system? Another nod, smaller this time. Then you comprehend that you've just publicly insulted and humiliated the person who will determine whether your squadron is certified as combat ready. The full implications crashed over Jessica like a wave. Without Eagle Eye certification, her squadron would be grounded from major operations. No operations meant no achievements. No achievements meant no promotions. Her career trajectory, so carefully planned, was crumbling. Kate, she whispered, turning to me with desperate eyes. You wouldn't sabotage my career over this? Every eye in the room turned to me. This was it, my moment for revenge. I could destroy her career with a single word, deny her squadron access to my technology, make her pay for years of condescension, dismissal, humiliation. General Richardson spoke carefully, each word measured. Ms. Morrison, no one would blame you for reconsidering our contract with Captain Morrison's squadron. We have 3 other units that would benefit from immediate Eagle Eye implementation. Jessica's hands trembled visibly. The sister who'd spent years making me feel small was now tiny herself, waiting for my judgment. Several officers shifted uncomfortably, witnessing what might be a career execution. Additionally, the general continued, your company's contracts include moral turpitude clauses. Disrespect from military personnel toward critical contractors is grounds for immediate reassignment. Sir, Major Thompson interjected quietly, Captain Morrison's next promotion board includes 3 officers present in this room. The subtext was clear. Everyone who mattered had just witnessed Jessica humiliate me. Her promotion was already dead, regardless of what I decided. General, I said, my voice cutting through the tension, I need time to consider this. May I review the squadron readiness reports first? Of course. Major Thompson, provide Ms. Morrison with all necessary documentation. He checked his watch with military precision. We'll reconvene in my office in 1 hour. Captain Morrison, you'll attend as well." As the crowd began to disperse, Jessica grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. "Kate, please. I know I messed up, but this is my life, my career, everything I've worked for." "Everything you've worked for?" I removed her hand gently but firmly. "Jessica, while you were mocking me for playing with computers, I was building technology that will save lives, your colleagues' lives, maybe even yours." General Richardson's office was exactly what you'd expect: walls covered with tactical maps, commendations, and photographs with 3 different presidents. Jessica sat rigid in her chair, her award forgotten on the desk between us, while I reviewed her squadron's files. "Ms. Morrison," the general began, settling behind his massive oak desk, "before we discuss Captain Morrison's situation, there's something you should know." He pulled out a classified folder, sliding it across to me. "Your prototype system in Syria, Operation Desert Shield, detected an incoming missile attack 17 minutes before our conventional radar systems." I looked up from the readiness reports. "The field test was successful then?" "Beyond successful. 300 personnel evacuated safely. 300 families didn't get notification of casualties because of your technology." He leaned back, his expression grave. "The Pentagon wants to fast-track implementation across all forward bases. Priority 1. Jessica made a small sound, surprise maybe, or recognition of what she'd dismissed as playing with computers. "Which brings us to Captain Morrison's squadron." The general pulled out another file. "They're scheduled to be the first full implementation on the West Coast, the flagship program, high visibility." "I see." I turned to Jessica, studying her for a long moment. "Your squadron's technical readiness scores are impressive, 97th percentile." Hope flickered in her eyes like a drowning person seeing a life preserver. "But," I continued, letting the word hang, "there's a problem. My technology requires absolute trust between civilian contractors and military personnel. Your squadron needs to understand that the computer hobbyist they're working with might be the person who saves their lives." Major Thompson cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if I may, the entire squadron witnessed today's incident. They're aware of the disrespect shown." "Then they're also aware that I could pull the contract." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Jessica, do you know what Eagle Eye actually does?" She shook her head, silent. "It predicts enemy aircraft movement using quantum algorithms. It can detect stealth technology that's invisible to every other system on Earth. The Pentagon calls it the most significant advancement in defensive technology since GPS." I paused. "And you called me unemployed, in front of your entire command structure." "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words barely audible. "I don't want apologies, Jessica. I want you to understand something." I leaned forward slightly. "The question isn't whether I'll maintain the contract. The question is whether you can work with a civilian contractor you've publicly humiliated. Whether your pride can handle reporting to your unsuccessful sister." I stood, walking to the window that overlooked Fort Bradley's main training grounds. Hundreds of personnel went about their duties below, each one trusting that someone, somewhere, was working to keep them safe. "General Richardson," I said, still facing the window, "I'll maintain the contract with Captain Morrison's squadron." Jessica's breath escaped in an audible rush, her shoulders sagging with relief. "However," I turned to face them, "I have conditions." "Name them," the general said, leaning forward with interest. "First, Captain Morrison will personally attend every training session for the Eagle Eye system. Not her subordinates, not her technical team, her. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 6 weeks. That's over 200 hours, Jessica said weakly. "Yes, the same amount of time it took me to debug the primary detection algorithm. The algorithm you thought was a hobby." I kept my voice level, professional. "You need to understand exactly what this technology does and why civilian expertise matters." "Agreed," Jessica said quickly, recognizing she had no leverage. Second, you'll write a formal letter to all squadron members explaining the importance of civilian-military partnerships. No mention of our relationship, just a professional acknowledgement that you were wrong to dismiss civilian contributors. General Richardson nodded approvingly. More than fair. Third, I continued, maintaining eye contact with Jessica, you'll volunteer to liaison with civilian contractors for the next year. Every contractor who comes to this base will work directly with you. You'll learn how the other side operates. You'll understand that innovation doesn't always wear a uniform. Yes, I'll do it. Fourth, the next time you introduce me to anyone, military or civilian, you'll introduce me as Catherine Morrison, CEO of Sentinel Defense Systems. Not your sister who works with computers. Not your unemployed sibling. My name and my title. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Jessica's voice was stronger now, a hint of her military bearing returning. Good. I turned to General Richardson. Because here's what I've learned, General. My sister isn't a bad officer. She's an excellent officer with a blind spot. She believes the uniform makes her superior to civilians. That attitude will get people killed when she can't effectively coordinate with civilian support. You're absolutely right, he agreed. This is a teaching moment, not just for Captain Morrison, but for everyone who witnessed today's events. Exactly. So, Jessica, consider this your first lesson in civilian-military integration. Respect is the foundation of operational success. The next morning, Jessica stood before her assembled squadron in Hangar 7. I watched from the back with Major Thompson, noting how her hands gripped the podium edges for support. I need to address yesterday's ceremony, she began, her voice steady despite the visible tension in her shoulders. I publicly disrespected a civilian contractor who has contributed more to our national defense than most of us ever will. My actions were unprofessional, arose from ignorance, and demonstrated a dangerous bias against civilian innovation. Several squadron members exchanged knowing glances. Word had spread quickly about exactly who I was. Effective immediately, I'll be serving as liaison to all civilian contractors working with our squadron. We depend on their innovation, their expertise, and their dedication to keeping us safe. I forgot that yesterday. I won't forget it again. She found me in the crowd, making direct eye contact for the first time since yesterday's disaster. Ms. Catherine Morrison, CEO of Sentinel Defense Systems, will be conducting our Eagle Eye training personally. You will show her the same respect you show any superior officer. Her knowledge will save your lives. Her technology already has 300 personnel in Syria are alive because of her work. As the squadron dispersed, several officers approached me. Ma'am, we're honored to work with your technology. Ms. Morrison, I've read about your quantum algorithms, revolutionary work. Thank you for not pulling our contract. We won't let you down. Each interaction was respectful, professional, the recognition I'd never received at family dinners or holiday gatherings. Jessica watched from across the hangar, seeing her subordinates treat me with the deference she'd never shown. It was a lesson in humility delivered with military precision. Captain Roberts, one of Jessica's peers, paused beside her. Your sister could have ended your career yesterday. You're lucky she has more class than you showed her. Jessica nodded, unable to argue. I know. Over the next 3 months, Jessica attended every training session. She took detailed notes, asked intelligent questions, and slowly began to understand the complexity of what I'd built. The algorithm processes 17,000 variables simultaneously? She asked during week 4, genuine awe creeping into her voice. 17,000 base variables, which exponentially expand based on weather conditions, terrain, and threat patterns. It's essentially predictive analysis at quantum speeds. How long did this take to develop? 7 years. Started the theoretical framework during my second master's at MIT. She flinched. That was the year she told everyone I was still in school because I couldn't handle the real world. By week 6, she could explain the system better than some of my own engineers. More importantly, she'd become a genuine advocate for civilian partnerships. Ma'am, she said after our final session, I've been thinking about what you said. About respect being the foundation of operational success. You were right. My arrogance could have cost us this technology. Could have cost lives. Yes, it could have. I've submitted a report to General Richardson recommending mandatory civilian integration training for all officers. He's considering implementing it base-wide. I studied her, noting the genuine change in her demeanor. That's a good start. The Eagle Eye implementation in her squadron was flawless. Their detection rates improved by 340%. They became the model squadron for the entire West Coast rollout, with Jessica personally training other units on civilian integration protocols. During the final certification ceremony, General Richardson made a point of recognizing both military and civilian contributors equally. Captain Morrison and Ms. Morrison have demonstrated that our strongest defense comes from partnership, not prejudice. Jessica found me afterward. Kate, I know I can't undo what I said, but you're right. You can't. But you can do better going forward. That's all any of us can do. The ripples from that ceremony spread throughout the military community faster than classified intel. Within a week, I received interview requests from Defense Weekly, Military Technology Today, and 3 major news networks. I declined them all. The work spoke louder than any interview could. But the military community is surprisingly small. Word spread. At the next family gathering, Thanksgiving, the dynamics had completely shifted. Kate! My father stood when I entered, something he'd only ever done for superior officers. His voice carried a mix of pride and shame. General Richardson called me personally. He said you're revolutionizing base defense. My mother hugged me tighter than usual, tears in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us, sweetheart? All these years. I tried, Mom. Remember last Christmas when I mentioned the Pentagon contract? You changed the subject to Jessica's commendation. They had the grace to look ashamed. The memory was clear now, how quickly they'd pivoted to Jessica's achievements, how my mention of some government work had been brushed aside like lint on a uniform. David, home on leave, shook my hand with military formality. Sis, my unit's getting Eagle Eye next month. My CO says it's the best thing to happen to force protection in decades. He also said you personally approved our squadron's access. Your readiness scores were excellent. He also said Jessica almost screwed it up for everyone. David's expression was carefully neutral. That true? Before I could answer, Jessica arrived. Out of uniform, in civilian clothes, she looked smaller somehow, diminished. She entered the room quietly, a stark contrast to her usual grand entrances. Kate's company just got another contract, she announced to the family, her voice steady but subdued. 70 million, Navy this time. How did you know that? I asked, genuinely surprised. The announcement isn't public yet. Admiral Chen mentioned it at yesterday's integration meeting. I'm on the Civilian Partnership Committee now. They wanted someone who understood both sides. She paused, meeting my eyes. Someone who'd learned the hard way that brilliance doesn't always wear a uniform. My father raised his glass, his colonel's bearing still evident despite retirement. To Kate, for protecting those who protect us. It was the toast he'd never given me before, the recognition I'd waited 32 years to hear. 6 months later, I stood in the Pentagon briefing room, presenting Eagle Eye's expansion to the Joint Chiefs. The room that had once felt impossibly formal now felt familiar. Jessica was there, part of the implementation committee, taking notes with the same intensity she once reserved for flight maneuvers. Ms. Morrison's technology has prevented 17 potential breaches across 7 bases, the Secretary of Defense announced. We're recommending full deployment across all branches. Budget approved, $500 million over 5 years. The number hung in the air like a victory flag. Several officials applauded. I remained composed, professional, the same demeanor I'd maintained while being called unemployed. After the briefing, Jessica approached me in the Pentagon cafeteria, the same place where years ago I'd sat alone while she attended military galas I wasn't invited to. Kate, can we talk? We found a quiet corner overlooking the memorial garden. Arlington stretched beyond, Endless rows of service and sacrifice. I got offered a position, she said. Pentagon, Civilian Military Integration Director, full-time. Congratulations, you've earned it. The thing is, she hesitated then pressed on. I'd be working with your company regularly, your direct liaison for all East Coast implementations. I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with that. I studied her. 6 months had changed her fundamentally. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine competence and hard-won humility. She'd become known throughout the military as the officer who bridged the divide, who understood that innovation could come from anywhere. Jessica, I need to know something. Are you taking this job because you believe in civilian-military partnership or because working with my company looks good on your resume? Both, she said without hesitation, meeting my eyes directly. But mostly because I've seen what happens when we dismiss civilian innovation. We almost lost your technology because of my ego. How many other innovations are we missing because of officers like I used to be? It was the right answer, honest, humble, real. Then yes, I'm comfortable with it. But Jessica, this is a professional relationship. In all technical matters, you'll be reporting to me. Can you handle your little sister effectively being your boss? She straightened, military bearing returning. You're the CEO of a defense company saving lives daily. The question isn't whether I can handle reporting to you. It's whether you can trust me to do it right. Can I? Yes, because I finally understand that respect isn't about rank. It's about recognition. Today, 2 years after that ceremony at Fort Bradley, Jessica and I have the relationship we should have had all along. Professional, respectful, honest. She introduces me correctly now. This is Catherine Morrison, CEO of Sentinel Defense Systems. No qualifiers, no diminishments, no air quotes around my work. Just facts. And when people ask how she knows me, she says, we work together on defense integration. She's also my sister. In that order, professional first, personal second. Last week, at a Pentagon reception, I watched her explain Eagle Eye to a group of new officers. This technology will fundamentally change how we protect our forces. It was developed by a civilian company. One person with a vision and 7 years of dedication. Never assume innovation only comes from within our ranks. One young lieutenant asked, "Ma'am, how do we identify civilian partners worth working with?" You listen, Jessica said simply. When someone tells you what they do, believe them. Don't translate it through your own bias. A computer hobbyist might be developing quantum algorithms. Someone between jobs might be negotiating classified contracts. The moment you assume you know better because you wear a uniform, you've already failed. And I've learned something too. Hiding your success to keep the peace isn't humility, it's fear. Fear of conflict, fear of jealousy, fear of standing tall. Real humility is doing important work without needing applause, but it's also not shrinking yourself because someone else feels diminished by your growth. At our last family dinner, Jessica raised a toast. To Kate, who taught me that the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. And that respect isn't about rank, it's about recognition. My parents have stopped comparing us. There's no point anymore. We're successful in completely different ways, and that's exactly how it should be. Dad tells his golf buddies about both daughters now, the decorated Air Force officer and the defense technology CEO. Equal pride, equal time. The Eagle Eye system now protects 47 bases worldwide. Pentagon estimates indicate it saved over 3,000 lives through early detection. Every time I visit a base for implementation or training, officers salute me, a civilian. Not because protocol demands it, but because respect transcends uniform. Jessica has become one of the military's strongest advocates for civilian partnership. She tells the story of that ceremony to every new officer orientation, not as a victim narrative, but as a cautionary tale about assumptions and arrogance. The person you dismiss today might be the one whose innovation saves your life tomorrow, she tells them. I almost lost my squadron, the most advanced defense technology in the world, because I thought my uniform made me superior, Don't make my mistake. But here's what I really learned through all of this. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about teaching people how to treat you. Jessica needed to learn that her uniform didn't make her superior to civilians. I needed to learn that keeping quiet about achievements wasn't keeping the peace. It was enabling disrespect. Boundaries aren't walls that separate us. They're bridges, structures that define where one person ends and another begins, creating space for genuine respect to grow. They're not about keeping people out, they're about establishing how people can come in. That day at Fort Bradley, when General Richardson saluted me, he wasn't just acknowledging my technology. He was demonstrating that contribution matters more than category, that innovation matters more than insignia, that respect is earned through impact, not uniform. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand tall and let your work speak for itself. If you've made it this far, you understand that respect isn't demanded, it's commanded through quiet competence and firm boundaries. Have you ever had to set professional boundaries with family? How did you teach them to see your worth? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and this community supports each other. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their quiet success is just as valid as anyone else's loud achievements. Subscribe for more stories about finding your worth and standing tall. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be successful. You just need to give yourself permission to be recognized for it.